Hi, Gerhard Bloom here, again, looking at the tyranny and the delusions of the social justice movement. So I frequently encounter remarks when I discuss Islam about my ignorance of the crimes of Christianity. Well, consider that these crimes are inconsistent with Christianity and Judaism, right? Unlike Muhammad, Christ was not a murdering, slave-owning, child-marrying general, right? And of course, I know all about the dated crimes of Christianity. Yes, Christianity had its own periods of darkness. For a century, Europe was plagued by incessant religious warfare, right? Jews were mercilessly terrorized, oppressed, and murdered. Yes, by Christians, sadly. People were tortured and burned as witches or heretics. There is no warrant for this in the Bible, right? Old Testament or New Testament, right? And fortunately, these crimes are centuries past. As the saying goes, the past is past. Christianity has confronted a gauntlet of criticism for centuries. The church of the 7th century is not the church of today. The same is not true of Islam, right? The Islamic world may have TV and internet, but its motivating ideology has remained unchanged from 7th century Arabia. Enlightenment reason, notions of individual rights, the rule of law, secular law, freedom of expression have almost entirely been shut out of the Muslim world. What better proof than the brutal practices that I've discussed previously? The female genital mutilation, the stoning to death of women, the denial of individual identity that the forced wearing of a cloth bag represents, the slaughtering of gays, the sawing off of hands, the virulent anti-Semitism. This happens today, as it did in the 7th century. Right? These practices are all features of modern Muslim societies, as they were in the 7th century, except, of course, the genital mutilation, right? This isn't part of Quranic law. This bit of barbarity has become an obligatory cultural practice in large parts of the Muslim world, right? Reinforced, no doubt, by the Muslim cult of patriarchal honor and tyranny. Slavery is still an accepted practice in the Muslim world. Gays are routinely murdered in Muslim-majority countries, either by the state or by their own families, right? And don't imagine that these practices are being forced upon a resistant population by secular dictators. No. They are, with the exception of genital mutilation, part of Islamic law. Far from being imposed upon a resistant populace, secular rulers have seen mass protests precisely because they failed in their duty to impose Islamic law, right? In other cases, laws limiting these practices, no doubt to appease the West, are simply ignored to avoid a backlash. The governments just turn an absolute blind eye. Take the case of child marriage. Although child marriage is formally illegal in Pakistan, large numbers of young women, girls really, continue to be subjected to this bit of barbarity. And by the way, child marriage is not, two young children being sworn to marriage as they become adults. No, this is 50-year-old men marrying 12-year-old girls, right? And Afghanistan, Pakistan, elsewhere, child marriage. This consigns a child to a life of sexual and domestic slavery. It is awful. And it continues because it's Islamic law. If you criticize a practice that Muhammad engaged in, the child marriage, the sexual tyranny, sexual slavery, the beheadings, the stonings to death, well, you might just be designated an apostate and killed for your trouble, right? This is why Islam doesn't reform, because reformers are killed. The Quran, didn't you know, is perfect, eternal, and complete, right? Doesn't leave much elbow room for Muslim reformers, right? Anyways, I hope you will check out my book, Deconstructing Social Justice. I discuss Islam at length, as well as a number of this diluted leftist nonsense. What does leftist and cultural Marxism have to do with it? Oh, they support the most radical members of the Muslim world. And Muslim reformers like Majid Nawaz, who wants to end the horrors and bring Islam up to the 20th century and the 21st century, he is shouted down as some sort of bigot, right? And Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who escaped the tyranny of Islam, she is shouted down by these leftist zealots, right? At any rate, do check out my book. I promise you, it's important. Not because I wrote it because the issues could not be more important. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Bye-bye.